right, Daze with Jordan Lion fans, how are you all today? I hope you said great. Today, if you are watching, you recognize this face. Catherine Hickland has been on our channel before, and there's Mama walking across. And, you know, one of the interesting things about Kat to me is, you know, Broadway star, daytime star, television star, and, you know, all of that comes from somewhere, and you always wonder, how did somebody get their start? And you and I were talking one day, and you were actually telling me that one of the most famous men in pop culture history was a part of your early life.
Yes.
EVEL KNEIVEL.
Yes.
How did that, how did you meet EVEL KNEIVEL?
Well, I met EVEL KNEIVEL when I was 17 on a golf course in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And, you know, we just became really good friends, and he was, I think, 39 at the time, so he was sort of like a father figure, I would say, because...
He never hit on you or anything like that? I just have to ask because, you know, he has such a history with loving women, so...
Yes, but, you know, all that aside, you know, like, I was super young, and, you know, I'm not really sure why we became good friends. You know, like, for me it was easy because of course I had a father, you know, but I didn't have a father that spent a lot of time with me, and so, you know, I didn't get a lot of like life lessons at home from a single dad, and I think that that's one of the things that I appreciated so much about EVEL KNEIVEL's presence in my life, because he really taught me the street smart, common sense kind of intelligence. I mean, because you can be really well read, and you can have gone to college, and you could have been valedictorian, and you could have done a lot of things, but if you don't have common sense, your life isn't going to be easy, because it's what is required. I think most of us, common sense is more important to me than anything, because you're going to use it every day of your life.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, I think I always had common sense, because I do think it's innate. But I do think also that just having somebody to teach you about life, and how hard it can be, and how great it can be, and the glory of it, and the pain of it, and all of that. And I think that he just so, you like my cat's tail, it goes right. He was just so great, and I mean, he was just really great, and he bought a house right down the street. As it turns out, that he had bought a house down the street from our house, from my family's house, and so he asked me if I wanted to come work with him, because I had just graduated from high school. And the house was right down the street, and he had a big yacht back then, and he...
Oh, wow.
It was called the Evil Eye. I remember it very well, and it had a helicopter pad on the top, because I remember F. Lee Bailey flying in one day on the helicopter pad. And for a 17-year-old girl, I'd always been around people, well-known people, because my dad, and so it wasn't anything unusual for me.
You weren't like starstruck by him?
I didn't. No, I wasn't starstruck by anybody when I was young, because Tarzan taught me how to swim, Johnny Weissmuller. So I mean, it's just I've been around people that were well known. They were my dad's friends, and so you know, it wasn't that. It was really, I knew how to be. I knew how to behave in a professional situation. So when I went to work for him, he was easy to work for. He was gone a lot, and you know, I just took phone calls, and would go with him to certain places, and it was great, you know, because everything was a life lesson. Every single thing was a life lesson.
One of the stories that you told me that kind of surprised me was when I got my very own motorcycle, and we were talking about riding it on the street, and that he went off on you for riding a motorcycle.
Yeah, because there were dirt bikes one day, and so I jumped on one, and I pulled up off the dirt and onto the road, and he flipped out. I mean, yelling, really angry, frustrated, you know, because and I was surprised, you know, and he said, get off the road. Don't ever take a motorcycle on the road. Don't ever, ever, ever be on a motorcycle on the road. And I thought, oh, come on now. Like, you're Daredevil.
Yeah.
And so I questioned him about it, and he said that he never, ever, he said, have you ever seen me on the road on a motorcycle? And I said, no, I can't say that I have. And he said, I can't control that. When he said, when I do a jump, when I do something, it's all measured out. You know, I know what's going to happen. I know what could happen. He said, when you go on the road on a motorcycle, you have lost all control. You have no idea what's going to happen because it's other people driving that, you know, have...
That shocked me that he would have that, because I always kind of think of him as just this recluse daredevil, crazy, will do anything, and a really smart guy behind all that.
Oh yeah, no, he actually he was very smart, and you know, he didn't suffer fools gladly. I think I learned that from him too. When I said that I wanted to go to Los Angeles to become an actress, he didn't like that too much because he thought I was a very nice girl, and he was really afraid that I was going to go out there and, you know, have people take advantage of me, and that I wasn't going to be able to take care of myself, and, you know, and
was he trying to prepare you for a job for something? Was that part of it, or?
No, I just really think that he'd been in Hollywood for a time. They made a movie about his life, and, you know, he was celebrated by Hollywood, I think, and so he was there, and he kind of saw the way that things work, and he, in his words, he said, that town will take a nice girl like you, chew you up and spit you out. Those were exactly the words. And so he said, I said, okay, well, I'm not going to let that happen, you know. And he said, well, I'm not going to help you. I said, I didn't ask you to help me, so it's okay, you know. So, and I didn't ever ask anybody for help, and I still don't, because I just feel like when you're friends with somebody, it's a fine line, you know, between being friends with somebody and them feeling used, or, you know, it is just the way it is, you know. And so I never ever have asked anybody for help. I just would figure it out, or I would work really hard to make it happen. And I always had a really good, I think, mind about auditioning. I didn't take it personally. Even though it feels really personal when you audition for things, and if you don't get it, it's something you really want, it feels a little personal, but it's not. They want you to be, if you are an actor, or you want to be an actor or an actress, you know, here's the thing about auditioning for things. They want you to be it. They really want this moment to be over. They want you to walk in and you be the one. Yeah, just, that's her, that's him, you know, like, well, we're going to take this. They want that, and because they'd like it to be over. And so, but if you don't get it, it doesn't mean that you weren't good enough, or it could have been 100 other things, and it probably was. So don't take anything personally. In fact, don't even take anything personally in life, because it's never personal.
Do you think you were more successful when you went to Hollywood because of having met him and learned some of the lessons that he wanted to teach you before you?
So what do you think the first thing that happened to me when I got there was? In the first month that I was there, I was walking down the street, and I didn't realize the only people that actually walked in Los Angeles were like hookers, or
oh wow,
I really just, people don't walk in LA, you know, because I've lived in New York before that. We walk everywhere. So so I think what happened was, my first month there, someone gave me his card, and he worked for Playboy Enterprises, and he was a talent scout, and there really is no talent when it comes to posing nude, but you know, he said, oh my gosh, you are perfect, can we bring you in and do some test shots at the studio for Playboy? And they gave me the photographer's name, and he was very famous, and it was all on the up and up. But you know, the thing that was really interesting was when he brought up the money, because he was saying, if you get Playmate, I think back then it was in the 70s, so it was like $25,000, which today would be hundreds of thousands of dollars, I would think.
Yeah, you would think.
And so, you know, to a person that's just starting out and, you know, doesn't have much, that sounds like a lot of money, but then Evel Knievel's words rang in my ears. all the time. All the time. Like, that town will take a nice girl like you, chew her up, and spit you out.
Yeah, you may never work again after you do something like that.
Well, you know what? It wasn't even anything I was tempted to do. That's not really in my nature to want to be around people without my clothes on. I'm far too uptight for that. But I think a lot of people probably start out that way and then they pose and everything's fine. But I just wasn't going to do it because I didn't want his words to come true. And so I think that there was a lot of value in having somebody bark those things at me, and he only did it because he cared about me as a person, and so how can I argue with that? I mean, he was just looking out for me, and I appreciate that.
Well, he was known for, he was kind of known for having a big ego and sometimes being hard to be. Did you ever see any of that side of him?
Well, it's a really good question because you have to have some kind of ego to make it like he did and how he did. And
was he still jumping and doing those kinds of things when you were?
Yeah, he was still jumping, but the thing is that he to say someone doesn't have an ego would not be fair, because I think there's two kinds of ego. I think there's a healthy ego and then there's a really unhealthy ego, and the healthy ego is what propels you forward to do the things that you can do, to have the cojones, to go out and make something happen. That takes nerve, and you've got to have that if you're going to be an entertainer.
And to get people behind you to think that you can do it, or and that's probably why he's looked at so much from so many people we know as like their childhood hero, like having the little toy Evel Knievel.
Oh yeah. And you know what? He was my childhood hero too. It's just because I love anybody that goes out and to the skinny end of the branch, and and really does everything they can to make their dream happen. And so when you have just one person to believe in you, just one, it can make a huge difference in that happening, because it's more important that we believe in ourselves. There's no doubt about that. But if you have just one person that believes in you, then you can do a lot. You really can. So, but he was not like an egomaniac. I didn't find him to be narcissistic. I've been around a lot of that in all my years of being in this business. I've seen a lot of that. I've dealt with a lot of that. No, he wasn't like that. He was just sure of himself, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. Did you ever get to see the years of him painting? Because that's one of the crazy things. Like, a lot of people don't know he did a lot of wildlife painting.
Yeah. He did that later in his life, after he retired. I didn't even know that he painted. I never saw him pick up a brush or paint in the 70s when when I worked for him. But he was a wonderful wildlife artist, and when he started doing that, by then he had moved on in his life. He was retired from Daredeviling, and he was married again, and he started doing the art, and they had a semi that they would put the art in, and so it was like almost like a traveling art show. And I was just really surprised at how good he was, because I never heard him talk about it or pick up a brush the whole time I knew him.
That's really cool. Now, Elvis had the TCB necklaces, and I was surprised you were telling me that Evil had a very unique necklace that he used to give people close to him as well. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I wish I had it so much, because it's been it's been a few semesters since this, but when I was 17 and went to work for him, I was turning 18, and so for my 18th birthday, he had like 3 or 4 people that worked with him, and so he and myself all went out to dinner for my birthday, and it was at a restaurant on the Intercoastal, so it was right on the water in Fort Lauderdale. And he had always worn this medallion, and I noticed that anybody that was on his team, if they were really close with him, they too had the medallion. And so the medallion was gold, and it was beautiful. It was about maybe that big, like this. So it wasn't small, and you couldn't tell what it was. It just looked like a lot of gold strands, but thick, that were kind of going back and forth. But when you took this and you held it up to a light and you cast a shadow on the wall, it cast a perfect shadow of the face of Jesus Christ. And it was unmistakable. And so that was a really great thing for me, because I am a Christian. So I love that he had faith, and that he wore Jesus on his body every single day, and that it meant so much to him that he also gave one to the people that meant something to his life. And so I got one for my 18th birthday. And we had been out the night before, and I was not allowed to stay out very late because I still lived at home. So I had to be home at 11 o'clock, and then when I turned 18, it actually moved to 12 o'clock. It was, ooh, right? So anyway, the couple of nights before, I think it was maybe the night before, we had been out we always traveled in like a pack. There was like 4 or 5 of us. And I'm not really sure why I was there or anything, but I enjoyed it. It was really fun. If I got invited to tag along for a dinner or something, it was always interesting. And I got to be around sophisticated people at an early age, which I think is really important, because it taught me how to take a meeting, conduct a meeting, how to listen, how to speak when it's time. And so we had been out a couple of nights before, and to be with him, in public was interesting, because women loved him. He was very handsome, and women loved him, and men wanted to be him. So he had that rare combination of those two things, which, everybody loves you for different reasons, Everybody admires you for different reasons. So this guy had been in this restaurant bar that we went to, and the couple nights before of my birthday, and he the girlfriend of the guy was going crazy because they both had a few drinks, and she saw EVEL KNEIVEL, and so she started la 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 la, right, and the boyfriend got really drunk, and he was very inebriated, and he came over,
and his ego's hurt,
and here's EVEL KNEIVEL minding his own business, and this went on a lot. But this is not somebody you want to start a fight with, I promise you that. And the guy took his hand back, and I knew it was coming, and he as his hand went back, EVEL KNEIVEL's, he punched the guy. He was faster, you know what I mean? He saw what was happening. The guy was inebriated. EVEL KNEIVEL was sober, so he got there first. His fist got there first. And the guy bit his hand. So he hit him, and the guy had his teeth, in his skin, and so he bit him. And so the next night, when it was my birthday and we were sitting at a table having dinner, or waiting for dinner, we ordered, he gave me my gift, which was the medallion, and then he started to get really like wobbly, and he just didn't look right. He got really pale, he got really sweaty, and he was starting to slur his words a little bit. And I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "No, I don't feel well at all." And he puts his hand up on the table, and when he put his hand on the table where he got bit was really swollen and infected. And I said,
no.
"Oh my God, you got bit by that guy last night, and the infection is starting to hit you, so we need to get you to the hospital, because that's worse than an animal bite, they say."
Wow. So
I took him to Holy Cross Hospital. I never forget it, because that's where I had my tonsils out when I was like 5, so it's the only hospital I knew about, so I took him there. And it was now like 9 o'clock or 8:30 or something, and so they took all his jewelry off, which was enormous amount of diamonds and gold and just incredible, and they put it in a baggie, and then they came out. I was waiting in the waiting room, and they found him a room. He had to check into the hospital, and then they handed me all this jewelry, and he had a Stutz Bearcat, which was a crazy expensive car.
Elvis had one.
Did he?
Yeah, too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So it had a solid gold dash. Part of the dash was just solid gold and had his name in it. It was just really amazing.
Wow.
Fast. It was beautiful. And so they bring me the jewelry, and I was like, what do I do with this? And they said, well, he wants you to take it home. He doesn't want to have it here in the hospital.
Yeah.
He's a little out of it. He's going to be spending the night, at least one night. He's badly infected. He wants you to come back, actually. Well, by the time all this happened, and they came back out and went back in and came back out, it was like 12:30. And I'm sitting there thinking, my mother's going to kill me because I missed my curfew. That's what I was thinking about the most. So but I didn't want to leave him there, and I didn't have a car, so it was, it wasn't close to my house, so I thought, I can't leave, I just got to wait and see. But we didn't have cell phones back then, so it wasn't like I could, plus I didn't want to wake my mom up. With any luck, I was going to get home, she'd still be sleeping, and I would not be in trouble. And
none the wiser. Because
my parents were super strict, so, especially my mom. So she said, he wants to see you. So at 12:30, I go back with the nurse and we go into his room, and he says, listen to me, I'm really sick, I'm going to be okay, but I have to stay here. I need you to take my jewelry home, and I need you to take my car to your house. And I was like, I don't know if I can drive a Stutz Bearcat. I don't. And so I was scared, And he said, no, you're fine. You're going to do fine. But I need you to be careful, get the jewelry home, get the car home, put it in the garage, check in with me tomorrow, and we'll see how I'm doing. I said, okay. So he said, what's wrong? You look stressed out. And I said, well, it's 12:45, and my mom is going to be really mad because I have a 12 o'clock curfew, and I've never been home late, and so I'm a little scared. I'm really nervous because my mom's real strict. I don't know what's going to happen. And he said, nurse, could I have the phone? She brings the phone over. I'm like, no, don't wake up my mom, because if I get home and she's sleeping, I might get lucky, right?
Yeah.
So, but he said no. So he called my mom. I gave him the number, and she was so mad. And I had the phone, and so I had it out here, and he dials it, and I said, and she answered the phone. She was wide awake. She was furious, and I said, Mom, and she said, you are in so much trouble. And he heard, because I had the phone out here, so he takes the phone and he goes, Mrs. Hickland? And she's like, yes. He said, this is EVEL KNEIVEL. Oh, hi. Because he just had this way with women, you know what I mean? Like, and then it was equal. It was a very interesting thing to watch fame of that magnitude at that level at such a young age for me. It taught me a ton. And he was so good to people. Like Elvis, he did a lot of good things for people that were never written about, that were never known about. He didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And so, like we were talking, those are the things that were missing from the movie about Elvis, was the goodness that he did for people, like anonymously, just, to do it. Sometimes not anonymously, but it certainly wasn't anything in the paper. It wasn't anything written about. I mean, it was really... So, so anyway, he charmed my mom, and I didn't get in trouble. And it was just an experience. I had so many experiences like that. And I remember driving one night, it was like 10 o'clock, and we were in the car, and we were driving, and we got lost, and it was in a really bad part of town, really dangerous, really bad part of town. And there was this little boy, the African-American boy, I'll never forget, and he was on his bike, and he saw the car. We were at a stoplight, and his face, it was just, his jaw just dropped open. And then when the window came down and he saw that it was EVEL KNEIVEL behind the wheel, his face just lit up, and he was so shocked. And so EVEL KNEIVEL said to him, we're lost, could you help us out? And the kid was just awestruck, and he tried to help us a little bit, and he said, so your jaw's hanging open, what are you looking at? Are you looking at the car? Are you looking at, and then he had all these diamond rings on, so he had big chunky gold and diamond rings, and he And he said, or are you looking at these? And the kid was like this. And he goes, well, you know what? Let me tell you something, young man. He said, you have a vision for your life and you stick to it. And when you grow up and you create that vision to be your reality, and you can, he said, you will also have nice things. And I was so, for a young mind like mine to see that was important, because it really just taught me that we're all the same, you know what I mean? We all have the same
Sometimes you just
needs.
need a little guidance or a little vote of confidence.
But I loved that he gave this child a nugget of wisdom, that he probably never forgot for the rest of his life. And to this day, I wonder where that child is and what he did, with his life, because it was really quite a moment. And I think that it was also a very big educational moment for me about how we should care about other people and how we should care about other people's dreams.
That's really cool. That's such a side of him. That's why I wanted to talk about it. Mm-hmm. When you watch the documentaries and stuff, you don't hear those sides of him. You hear this a selfish side, or a guy who was focused on his career and everything. And I thought that was so cool that you had such a different story.
Yeah, and I've never talked about it ever, or written about it, except for that's not true actually. I was in a play off Broadway called Pieces, which was an incredible show, and I talked about Evel Knievel in my monologue, because I know that I get my fearlessness from him. I know that I get my drive from his influence in my life. And I know that, I also understand how important it is to care for other people.
Yeah.
And so I think that I definitely got way more than he probably got out of it, although he, many years later, because when I moved to LA, that's when he got in a lot of trouble, and he ended up in prison.
Is that the time that he attacked the guy?
Yes.
Okay.
When he attacked the guy
with the baseball bat.
Yes.
For the movie.
Yep. Because the guy was a terrible man.
Yeah.
Because he talked him into letting him be his PR person for the Snake River Canyon jump, and then he was everywhere in the private jet and everywhere he went, and he had privileged access to a man who did not trust people or even have an agent really to speak of. He was his own one-man band, and he did a beautiful job, and he could trust himself. So,
yep.
I mean, that was all that. So what happens was this guy talks him into hiring him for PR, and he is everywhere with him, and then when the whole thing was over, the guy wrote a book.
Exposing everything.
And I just remember how horrible I felt that was, because we've all been wronged by somebody. Nobody gets out without that. You know, we've all been hurt and wronged by people. But when it's your worst nightmare, I mean, he had no right to do that. And so I was not working for him anymore, and I was in LA, and I was already working in television and had gotten some good breaks. And so I was I was doing pretty good. And then I saw the news one night that he was arrested for beating someone up, this guy that we're talking about, with a baseball bat as he came out of where he worked. Mm-hmm. And so he got arrested and put in jail. And so it was on the news that night, and I was in LA, and when they said that he had been released on bail, I knew where he stayed in LA, and I knew the name that he was stayed under, because I used to make those reservations for him. So I called that hotel and asked for that cartoon character that he used, and boom, he answered the phone. And I said, what's happening? What's going on? So he told me about this whole situation, and he said, and I would do it again, because he had no right to do that to me.
Yeah.
And he hurt me, and he hurt my family, and he hurt my wife. And that was, I think, the thing that he was so upset about, was that he never wanted to hurt his wife, and that he really loved his family. So, you know, it was just, in his mind, it was the worst thing that anyone could have done. And so he took matters in his own hands, and honestly, I get it.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't say, oh, that's terrible. No, I get it. It's just, you know, you lose your mind when somebody betrays you to that extent.
The reason I also agree, like I kind of saw his side, was because I always have gotten the impression that that guy, that was his plan from the beginning. It always kind of looked like he always intended on writing that and just bamboozled him the whole time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he did. And so what happened after that was, so he said, I am probably going to be in a lot of trouble. And he said, and I'm just really glad you're here. So let's, you know, I'll be here for a while because I don't think I'm going to be able to leave. He said, so let's stay in touch with each other. And I said, okay, and if you need anything, of course I'm here. You know, like I'll just pick up where I left off, even though I have this career now.
Yeah,
you know. But you know, I was a loyal friend. He was a loyal friend. You know, and he's truly loyal. You know, so so what that happened, and that was kind of it. That Snake River was over. You know, he didn't really do any spectacular jumps after that, and I was with him at meetings and things for things he was going to do. That he was proposing, you know, and so with like Wide World of Sports and things like that. So we kind of picked up a little bit of, you know, me helping him out during that time, and then he actually did get put in prison. So he was always trying to do something nice for the inmates there, and he said, and this tickled me a lot. So there's one TV for everybody, and I know this now because I'm actually in a prison ministry. And so I'm in maximum security prisons often, and so I see exactly how that works. And the TV is there, and everybody has to kind of agree that they're going to watch this particular show. So he was watching the TV with the other inmates, and he called me and he said, well, get this. And I said, what? And he said, you came on TV tonight, your show came on tonight, and I said to everybody, that girl was my assistant. That girl was my assistant. And they all went, sure she was. And so I thought that was really great, because when I went to work for him, he was so famous, and you know, I didn't.
That's great that you got to, that he got to see you make something.
And he did. And then we didn't talk for many years. And then he reached out, and you know, and we said hi, and we had a mutual friend. It was an agent, and so he connected us back to each other. And he was married then, and living in Florida, and he had a kidney transplant, and so you know, he was not in the best of health. He lived a lot longer than most transplants do, though. So I mean, he really lived.
He golfed a lot too, didn't he?
He golfed a lot, yes. And he settled down, you know, he was settled. He was married, he settled. A little different than the man that I remembered, you know, from when I was younger, but he was, he got more and more sick and ill, you know, then it's so funny when I'm thinking about him now, just, you know, I can't believe he's gone, even though it's been a long time, because he was so larger than life, and he was such a good person and an important person in my life. And he very much, you know, wanted to talk towards the end. You know, he really wanted me to know certain things, and he really wanted to say certain things. And, you know, because I was so much older, I was able to understand, because I had a lot of life experience by that time. When you're 17, you have very little life experience, but when you're, you know, when you're in your, you know, when you hit, you know, 40 and above, you've got some mileage behind you, and you know, so you understand things a little bit better and a little deeper. So, you know, it was really nice to have him. He said, I'm not doing well, I'm really quite sick, and I just wanted to call and say, you know, that I love you, and that, you know, thank you for being such a great friend. And it really got me, because it just was impossible to me that this vibrant, amazing human being was so ill.
Yeah.
And so we had a great talk, and then he said that he was going to be calling Reverend Robert Schuller.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember him?
Cathedral.
The Crystal Cathedral.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Reverend Schuller was, God, 90 or something like that at this point. And he was also one of my favorites too. I loved the Crystal Cathedral, and I loved his gentle teachings. You know, he didn't shove your face in it. It was just very soft and beautiful in the way he taught the Word of God. So, so he said he had called him and asked him to come down to Florida because he was clearly dying, and he wanted to have him there and do an altar call with him, which is, if you don't know what that is, it's when you dedicate your life to the Lord and accept your salvation through Jesus Christ. That's exactly what it is. So that's what he wanted, and Reverend Schuller said, but I don't need to be there for that. We can do this, over the phone. And he said, no, I want you here. So he went down to Florida and basically had that talk with him, and so I feel good because I know that he's in heaven, so that makes me feel really good because I know.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So I know I'll see him again.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's
I wish everybody knew what a great man that he actually was.
They will now.
Yeah, because he really was special, and to this day, when you say those two names together, Evel Knievel, right? When you say those two names together, people still, I don't know about young people if they know who he is or anything, but anybody over 40, is like, because he was a hero to so many people.
Absolutely.
And I don't want people to think that their hero status that they gave him was misplaced, because it wasn't. He was a good person, really good man. Yeah.
Well said. Thank you very much,
Thank
Kat.
you. It's good to see you, and I love your people, so it's very nice to be doing this interview again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everybody, and have a happy holiday, and be kind, especially to yourselves, and love yourself completely and totally. And life gets better when we do. So thanks for watching, and I love Jordan, and I know you do too. Bye, guys.